maintain the support they'd had for not cracking down on the anti-Mubarak movement. AlJazeera, Cairo.
2 Iranian Navy ships are expected to sail through the Suez Canal to the Mediterranean on Monday. It will be the first time Iranian vessels have sailed through the key shipping lane since 1979. They're believed to be on their way to Syria. Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman has condemned the move as, quote, a provocation. 2 German journalists have been released from prison in Iran after being arrested for spying. Markus Helwig and Jens Koch were sentenced to 20 months in prison for interviewing the son and lawyer of a woman condemned to die by stoning. But Iran's Revolution Court has now quashed the sentences, instead handing down a $50,000 fine for each man. Germany's ruling Christian Democrats could be in for a drubbing in the series of regional elections that begin in just a few hours. That could further shake the stability of German Chancellor Angela Merkel's coalition, which has seen its popularity slide. Nick Spicer reports from the city of Hamburg, which is one of the first to vote.
Shipping gets a vote of sorts in Hamburg politics. It is Europe's 3rd biggest port. And the mayor wants to dredge the river so that more vessels can come and use it. But that's not going to save Christoph Ahlhaus. The man from Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats is poised to lose, some 20 points behind the Social Democrats candidate. He sounds in denial.
So you're still hopeful? Even
sure.
Though, yeah.
We do not only hope, we will fight.
Voters in Hamburg are starting off what will be a whole season of regional elections in Germany. There will be at least 7 out of 16 regions, and they threaten to give Angela Merkel's governing coalition a very rocky ride, and especially for the junior partner in that coalition, the Free Democrats.
Leave the shop open, they chant, young members of the local Free Democrats. The shop has to close at 4 on Saturdays, and these defenders of the free market don't like that. Their party scored well and played a kingmaker role in the last general election, joining Angela Merkel in her coalition government. Some 2 years on, there's a problem. Experts say giant deficit spending saved the German economy, so few people are now buying the Free Democrats' mantra of tax cuts.
They said if we lower the taxes, we will have a revival of our economy. We have not lowered our taxes, and we had nevertheless a revival of our economy.
Hamburg's politics are like those of the other regions voting this year, largely local. But if the Free Democrats keep losing ground, Chancellor Merkel may need to start looking for a new national coalition partner. Nick Spicer, AlJazeera, Hamburg.
As the G20 summit wraps up in France, we'll be telling you why this family photo isn't as happy as it might be. Plus, we'll be meeting the Mexican villagers who are taking the law into their own hands with incredible results.
As geeks take on dictators, bloggers turn dissidents, and social networks root for social justice, governments are going cyber, spying on their citizens, erecting firewalls like iron curtains, and closing down websites. We ask, is cyber-generated change virtual or real? Empire at this time on AlJazeera.
They grew up as Americans, children of refugees who fled the war in Somalia. Yet now, some are returning to fight and die in a homeland they can barely remember. This is the story of young Somalis who have forsaken the American dream in pursuit of a jihadist ideology. What's turned them to this path? What's been the impact on their families back here in the US? And what can the American authorities do about it?
The Raghi Omar Report, at this time on AlJazeera.
Welcome back. A reminder of the top stories here on Al Jazeera. Witnesses have been talking about a massacre by government security forces in the Libyan city of Benghazi, and Al Jazeera has also been told that demonstrators in the capital Tripoli have also been attacked. In Bahrain, talks are expected to get underway between protesters and the country's rulers. The move comes after demonstrators gathered again at the Pearl Roundabout in the capital Manama after riot police pulled out. A national strike has been called for Sunday. Protests are now being planned in Morocco, where it's being billed as a day of dignity. Thousands are expected to call for the king to dissolve parliament and implement reforms. Opposition groups are also planning to hold demonstrations in Iran. Members of the G20 rich and developing countries have hammered out a deal in France on how to measure the imbalances in the global economy. The issue has been blamed for making the 2008 financial crisis much worse than it could have been. But as Jackie Rowland reports from Paris, it took a bit of work to get China on board.
Putting on a show of unity. The smiles of the family photo can't paper over the divisions within the G20. The world's leading financial powers agree that there are imbalances in the global economy, but it's much harder to agree on how to measure them. The sticking point was China. It didn't want its massive foreign currency reserves to be used as an indicator, but G20 members were able to reach a compromise.
This is a very complicated undertaking, and we need to be very careful to make sure we create a level playing field across countries so that financial activity does not migrate to jurisdictions where standards are weaker or less vigorously enforced.
Ministers have also been focusing on commodity prices, and food prices in particular. They want to find ways to protect the poorest countries against big price swings.
We have had a major convergence of views between different countries, developing countries and emerging countries, industrialized countries, to say that we had to go much farther in transparency, in the identification of stocks, in the use of agricultural land to respond to the need of population for food.
The financial crisis of 2008 was a global phenomenon, and ministers recognise that they'll need to take a global approach if another meltdown is to be avoided. The French hosts of this meeting have warned countries that they'll need to put self-interest to one side if the whole of the G20 is to achieve strong, sustainable growth. The long haggling over indicators raises a bigger question. If the members of the G20 found it so hard to agree on how to measure global imbalances, will they ever reach agreement on how to tackle those problems? Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera, Paris.
Well, across the water in London, protests have been staged outside branches of Barclays Bank. It follows revelations that in 2009, the company paid little more than 2% of its annual profits as tax. Harry Smith reports.
This was the scene outside one branch of Barclays Bank in central London as up to 50 protesters